Hello there. We are live. This is Kitty Shambliss here with Coach B. We are here for Loving Without Boundaries, which is a mission that I hold near and dear to my heart that I started back in December of 2012. And we also started our online private community back in August of 2015. So if you are looking for a community and you're not in it right now, you can go onto Facebook to do a search for Loving Without Boundaries, Healthy Open Relationships, and Lifestyle Freedom, because we're not allowed to say sex there. And you can also check out our podcast, Loving Without Boundaries. We are 266 episodes strong, and I am proud to say that our podcast has been nominated for the Women in Podcasting 2025. There will be voting that starts, I believe, in 2 days. So really exciting. So please help elevate voices all around the world by casting your vote, whether it's for us or somebody else. I believe we are in the personal growth space, but very exciting times indeed, focusing on the positive of what's going on, because there's a lot of things we could be focusing on that is not so great. So with that being said, B and I have a beautiful conversation today about balanced agreements in relationships when we are talking about building relationships on your terms, whether that's creative monogamy, consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, whatever it is for you. Having agreements, and there's other ways you can talk about those. You can call them mutual understandings or relationship goals or whatever works for you. So with that, I'm going to give the mic over to B to get us started. Great to see you, B.
Hello, everyone, and happy Tuesday. And Kitty, I love that you started out with naming different terms for agreements, because this is one of the first points that I wanted to touch on regarding how challenging and turbulent and distressing agreements can be for so many different reasons. Starting out with the word itself can become a trigger, or can be a trigger for whatever you're in your journey. Maybe simply the agreement based on your own history. It triggers something. So we know a few amazing people that we work with who created their own definition. They find a different word that actually works for both of them, like aspirations or intentions or goals, because they just couldn't get along when they used the word agreement. So this is one of the sources of distress that contribute to navigating agreements. And of course, in consensual non-monogamy, when you add more people, it's going to be more complexity. So you possibly need to up-level your skill set even more. So sometimes you might notice, whether you're new to consensual non-monogamy or further along the road, that occasionally you need to up-level your skills. Let it be emotional regulation skills, let it be finding the right word for agreements that works for you, or maybe you notice that you have some other type of triggers around agreements that create a source of distress for you. For example, you have an underlying limiting belief around your needs don't matter, you don't have a voice, or you fear advocating for your needs. And there are some other sources as well that can create distress. For example, for some of you, agreement might be a beautiful declaration of a relationship or a connection, a source of safety. This is something that symbolizes you, that you're feeling heard, that you're cared for. And maybe for your partner, it's one of the worst possible things that can happen, because they feel that it's something that limits their freedom, that limits their authenticity. So these are definitely a few things that need navigating when we talk about creating balanced agreements. And I want to give you a definition of agreements as well. It goes as follows. It's the best description that we have at the moment for all our needs present. And throughout agreements, we co-create strategies that work for all parties. Ideally, they feel balanced. In the big picture, you might not have your ideal outcome like most of the time, but in the big picture, you're okay with what's happening, and you are able to work together as a team, like regularly, to revisit and refine your agreements.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction on this incredibly important topic. And I know you and I see this with our clients all the time. A lot of times, like you said, a lot of conflict and arguments can come up from either not having any agreements or not even knowing what they are, or arguing about, do we even need them, things of that nature. And one quick distinction I just want to make is the difference between rules versus boundaries versus agreements. So the way we use those terms, we consider rules when people are attempting to come up with rules to control somebody else's behavior because somebody might be feeling a little uncomfortable, so having some discomfort, whether that's some jealousy or insecurity. So in an attempt to limit those feelings to feel more comfortable, we might put some rules on other people. That's the way we use that word. Healthy boundaries are based on yourself and you getting clear on what your values are, what your limits are. They're really about your own self-care, your own self-preservation, and then you can express them and make requests of other people to honor those boundaries. But those boundaries are really about you. And then you get to decide what to do based on other people's reactions to that. And then agreements, the way we're using that here is when everyone is getting more clarity around their boundaries, their values, their own needs. We like to say that needs are all life affirming, positive, and beautiful, and looking at them together on the table and then willingly and joyfully making agreements that can shift, that can adjust over time because we're all human, and then work together as a team to be clear about those and to know that it's a living, breathing document. And so I just wanted to get that out there now, because a lot of times people might just have an expectation that they can just the first time out of the gate make these perfect set of agreements right away and everything will just be hunky-dory. But the other thing I want to underscore is that it is a mutable, changeable, evolving document, because we as human beings are evolving and changing, and our needs and our values that are our highest ones are evolving and changing. So we want to just make sure that you're not setting unrealistic expectations, that you're just going to, first of all, write up your own and just expect your partner to sign on to that. It's got to be a negotiation, right? Where, and I like to think of it as more of like an egalitarian conversation with some reciprocity and goodwill in creating those agreements. As a matter of fact, that's even one of the first agreements I recommend is assume goodwill, assuming that you are not in an abusive relationship. Assume that each person loves each other and is coming to the conversation with positive intent to heal, repair when there are ruptures, and honor each person with respect, building trust with mutual affection. So I just want to say that, and I'll give the microphone back over to you, B, to continue the conversation.
Yes, super important, the points that you highlighted, Kitty, because this is where I started out on my journey as well. I wanted to be perfect on the first try, and I see others as well coming from that really best place, that they want to create a beautiful document that will create safety and whatever they want to create in your relationship, and like they have to work in the first try. And it's so important what you shared, that it's the best practice to look at agreements as a living, breathing document, and to have that openness in ourselves around flexibly going back, renegotiating when it's need to be renegotiating. So we don't want to add additional pressure on the complexities of non-monogamy by putting too much pressure on the agreement has to be perfect the first time. And sometimes what can happen if we want to be really perfect and we have a type of rigidity, even unintentionally, with the first draft of an agreement, what it can result is not only conflict, but we might enter into an emotional state of blame or judgment. Maybe it comes out as a behavior as well, like reactivity and arguing. It can also lead to lost trust and feeling betrayed, and also stuck in the pain, versus moving forward with constructive solution and simply just going back to renegotiating the agreement. So I would really encourage you all to listen to Kitty's words of wisdom and create your own empowering meaning before you go and create agreements. Like what is the most constructive, most empowering meaning around renegotiating agreements. So how can we give grace ourselves and to each other so that this is a beautifully co-created living and breathing document? Because if you have that empowering meaning at the beginning, you can really save lots of time and pain further along the road.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
something else, oh, sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to.
go ahead, B. Go ahead, B.
Something else that I wanted to touch on, and that's also connected, is as with any type of relationships, let it be like friendships, work relationships, relationship with kids, and in monogamous relationships as well, sometimes we have to compromise. So it's important to keep remembering that in concession on monogamy with more added people, it's more complexity. So aiming for a healthy compromise can be another really smart move to do. So of course we all want to have our ideal outcomes at first and for the rest of our lives, and we don't have to touch that because we always get what we want. And sometimes it's part of any relationships that instead of the ideal outcomes, we accept that we might not get the ideal one. And it can be important to define like what is your middle outcome that could still work for you, and what is the bare minimum that's acceptable. So you have some sort of flexibility when you create agreements. So instead of I want the ideal outcome, we all want that ideal outcome, create some space for you so you can stay on the theme of within a teamwork and a field of understanding with each other when you work out your agreements.
Thank you for that, B. I couldn't agree more. And I'll bring up something else that we've seen with some of our clients is if we haven't done the preliminary work of figuring out what our own boundaries are, what our own tolerances and limitations are, we could get into a trap of saying yes to an agreement when we're not really a heck yes. We might be I don't know, let me think about that, or I'm not so sure, or we could even be just a full on no and not have done the work to realize that ahead of time. And then that can cause a lot of hurt and pain and ruptures in the relationship, because then inevitably that agreement may get broken if we say yes when we really meant to say no. And when we think about the personal responsibility, who's kind of at fault? Well, honestly, in that scenario, it's really the person who said yes when they really didn't mean a heck yes. So that's why it's really important to do that work ahead of time. And that is a lot of the things that we are helping our clients to figure out. Anything else you wanted to add before we start to talk about some ways to come to solutions around this, B?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to further expand on sometimes saying yes when we really want to say no. Keep checking in with yourself. So what Kitty talked about, this foundational work, like figuring out your own limits, your own needs, what's important to you, what's a non-negotiable boundary, what's a flexible boundary for you. It's super important. And there's also a pattern that you want to look at if you notice this in yourself, that maybe you indeed feel comfortable saying yes to something, and then when the event actually happens, when something uncomfortable happens, you keep going back on the agreement. So it's like you're a yes, you're indeed a yes, and you're later a no, and you're a yes again to something and then a no to something. So I really encourage you, if you notice this particular pattern in yourself, then look into some of your limiting beliefs. Some healing may need to happen around this so that you can create a more stable well-being for yourself. So when you say yes, it's really going to be that heck yes, that enthusiastic yes. Because with yes, then I'm a no, and I'm genuinely yes, then I'm really a no, it's going to create a pain for yourself and for your relationships as well. And this is something that I've seen happening, and there's nothing wrong with that. So there's no right and wrong here. It just means that you might have some work to do to create a better well-being for yourself.
Yeah, I just captured that in the chat too. That's a great question that you might want to ask yourself is what's getting in the way of me working in a healthy, collaborative way with my partner on agreements, or whatever word you want to use, whether it's aspirations or mutual understandings. Is there perhaps something that needs to heal? And again, coming from that place of self-responsibility, it's your work to figure out what are your your core wounds or your limiting beliefs that are based on maybe some past trauma that you need to heal. And sometimes we might be able to do that work on our own, but often you may want to work with a professional like a certified coach or a good therapist, because just like any other profession, there's going to be good therapists and bad therapists, good coaches and bad coaches. And B and I really pride ourselves on doing our internal work and also doing our own education. So, and we are both certified coaches so that we can be the best versions of ourselves to steward our cherished clients through that journey, because it's tricky stuff. It really can be very tricky. And we say that from experience. Like we're in the trenches doing that in our own lives, both the internal work, but working on healthy agreements. And sometimes, and I know B would back me up in her own experience as well, sometimes we realize a relationship is actually not working out for our highest and greatest good if we keep attempting to craft healthy agreements with our partners and they're either unwilling or unable, or they keep getting broken again and again and again, despite all of our best efforts. That's part of the work too, is to figure out how to have healthy boundaries around yourself and your own well-being and your own self-care, to sometimes say, hey, maybe it's time that we part ways so that we can both find healthier dynamics with somebody else. That's part of the work as well. That can be challenging. And sometimes it can be difficult to make that decision on our own. So it's another place where you may want to work with a professional. So some things to think about is, we talked about needs, how needs, as our human beings, we all have life affirming, positive, beautiful needs. And sometimes we can get confused in terms of strategies versus needs to get those needs met. And you can think of even crafting agreements, that is a strategy in a way for us to mutually create understandings and understand things from each person's perspective, and get that like written out so that we're not accidentally stepping on each other's toes. And speaking of stepping on toes, it's also important to give each other grace, because we are all going to make mistakes. That's part of just the human experience. As we both said, you're not going to get it perfect right out of the gate. And as we've also alluded to, thinking of agreements as a living, breathing document. So being open to renegotiate, understanding that we are all evolving and changing every single day. And so it might be something that you check in on once a month in a healthy relationship. How are we doing honoring these agreements? How are we doing meeting each other's needs? How can I better support you? How can I better support this relationship? Asking those critical questions can really mean everything, so that you are creating a sense of safety and security, reciprocity, and a sense of that your partner has your back, like you're on the same team with each other. So if anything we're saying is resonating with you and you are perhaps looking for some assistance in creating healthy relationships in your life, especially when we're talking about tricky and complicated consensual non-monogamy or creative monogamy or polyamory or what have you, you can reach out if you want to have a conversation. Here we go. Here's the link. It's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. When you go to that link, it'll take you right to my calendar. Just simply pick a time slot that works best for you and your schedule. And there'll be a very brief form for you to fill out that just gives me a little bit of context for our conversation. Let me get to know you a little bit better before we jump on that call. And then we'll meet on that call. We'll put our heads together to see if working together with a coach, and are we a fit to work together? Do you have the qualities to succeed? Do I think I can help you given what we uncover on that call? And if the answer is yes, we can talk about a game plan to do that and what that looks like. And if it's not the right time, you have my word that I will let you know that, and I will do my best to steer you in the best direction for you so that you get a lot of value and clarity from that time that we spend. So we really care about and are very passionate about our community here at Loving Without Boundaries. And we are here to help. As coaches, that's what we are. We are a helping profession. And certainly with the world as it is in this chaotic environment right now, we need to support each other. And I really do believe that together we are stronger and we are better. So I'll give the mic back over to you, B, to start to wrap up our conversation.
So as per usual, I brought some self-reflective questions to help you on your journey toward healthy and balanced agreements. So question number 1, what limiting beliefs, fears, or triggers do you have around agreements, if any? Question number 2, what does a balanced agreement look like in your relationship? Or relationships, if it's multiple relationships. And the third question is, how can you stay curious and open if an agreement doesn't go as planned, so you can understand what happened and move forward constructively?
Awesome. Thank you, B. Really beautiful and amazing topic, balanced agreements. So I just want to thank you, B, for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I really do believe it's of service to our community. I see we have some people watching live here on X. So I just want to say a shout out to all of you. We've definitely been getting some more headway in that particular environment. And again, if you are looking for community, feel free to find our private space on Facebook, Loving Without Boundaries, Healthy Open Relationships and Lifestyle Freedom. Feel free to vote for our podcast, Loving Without Boundaries, in the personal growth space for the Women in Podcasting Awards for 2025. Once that goes live, I think on May 1st it is. I believe that's Thursday. And with that, we will see you on our next sharing here on our lives. So thank you, B, for your time. I really appreciate it. All right. Bye, everyone.